welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 567 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, not only ask you to agree with me, I'm asking you to hear me out. To start this episode, I think it's important to bring you guys behind the curtain. Because for people that don't know, I usually drop an episode. I drop the DSPs, the audio version, at midnight on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And I drop the visuals, the YouTube version, at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And for people that's wondering why this episode is coming out so late, I had a whole other episode that was recorded, that was ready to drop. And this is also highlights the beauty of sports and how sports are forever changing and in an instant can change the whole landscape of anything that you're talking about. What I mean by that is I had an episode planned to drop at midnight and at 9 a.m. today. And it was talking about how free agency is going, how Maxx Crosby going to the Ravens is a huge deal, not just for the Ravens, but for the rest of the league. And I was praising the Ravens for, this is the first time they give the first round pick in a trade. All of that was going to be in the episode before this. But sports happened. And as I sit here today, I had to scrap the episode because it was beyond outdated at that point. It's crazy how an episode that was recorded just hours before becomes obsolete and outdated in a span of hours. But where I want to start is this Maxx Crosby situation and how, while it's unlike anything that it's not unlike anything that we've seen before, it's not a norm. The Ravens had a deal. They traded for Maxx Crosby. They traded 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. Now, on the table, you would think that was a blockbuster move, and it is a blockbuster move. Maxx Crosby, in all intents and purposes, is one of the best edge rushers in football. And we know that one of the Ravens' biggest issues has been their edge rush, their pass rush. They have not been able to generate pass rush on a consistent basis for the last few years now. And getting someone like Maxx Crosby changes just the whole dynamic of the team, especially the defensive side of the ball. And it's very hard to explain how it helps the entire defense, but it does. So the Ravens traded 2 first-round picks, and in football terms, that is steep. 2 first-round picks, one this year, one next year, for a player like Maxx Crosby. That should tell you, and you should know how vital of a player they view Maxx Crosby. But they trade for Maxx Crosby. And while this is not the first time this has happened, I have to specify that all these agreed to terms and free agent deals, they're not binding until today at 4 p.m. until March 11th at 4 p.m. Meaning all these trades, all these free agency deals are not binding until 4 p.m. on the March 11th. That's when the new NFL physical season starts. So, and the reason why this episode now is coming out so late is because I get an alert. I think everyone gets them, but I get an alert saying Maxx Crosby deal is off. I'm like, what happened? They say Ravens back out of the Maxx Crosby deal. That's all the first alert said. I'm like, wait, what? Wait a second. What you mean? Ravens back at the Raiders put out a thing saying the Ravens backed out of the deal that was previously agreed to with Maxx Crosby. There's no further discussion. Like, hold up, what is going on? The Ravens just had essentially one of the biggest transactions this entire free agency. How do you go from that to backing out? How do you go from having one of the best defensive players in football essentially going to be on your roster to saying, nah, I'm good? How? And then you start hearing, well, he failed his physical and he's not as healthy as they thought. And now he has to go back to the Raiders and the Ravens get their 2 first-round picks. Yo, again, this isn't the first time this has happened, but I do believe this is the first time it's happened to a player this massive. And I don't, Maxx Crosby, in all intents and purposes, can change the fortune of a team. That's how good of a player he is. So let me now break down how major this is and why this is so major. And there's a lot of tentacles to this. For one, I don't know if you guys noticed. Clearly, you guys did, but the Raiders were active during free agency. Like they agreed to a deal with Tyler Lindenbaum, who was going to make him, I think, one of the highest paid or the highest paid guard in NFL history. They were going to get Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker. Like they made a bunch of moves with the assumption that Maxx Crosby's deal, which is a max deal at that, was off the books because they thought not only would they have a first round, the 14th overall pick this year, they would have the 2027 first round pick from the Ravens, and Maxx Crosby, that deal would be off their books. So they just started spending. And no offense to and I guess I'll give credit to them. They spent wisely. They did good. But again, that was under the assumption that Maxx Crosby was going. Well, Maxx Crosby is going to be off their books. So with this whole trade falling apart or Ravens backing out the deal, now they have to figure some things out. Now you might have to go to some free agents and be like, hey, we can't pay you, or we can't give you this, we can't give you that. This changes the entire dynamic of the Raiders. It's like that is such a tough situation to be in because on top of the fact of the Ravens did this, and I'm going to talk about the Ravens aspect in a second, but the Ravens did this essentially at the 11th hour. Now, there will be some moves that the Raiders have agreed to that they can't do anymore. And that's the frustrating part about this, at least for the Raiders side. Now, I do know that the relationship, even though it's clear that Maxx Crosby did not want to leave the Raiders, which is I do think that okay, I understand. I understand the want to be a one team player. I get that. We talk about that with Steph Curry a lot. I get wanting to the legacy that brings or that leaves and the love that you get and just the familiarity of being with one organization for your entire career. I get it. And I know that Maxx Crosby, hell, he put out a 12-minute like goodbye Raiders video and even said in that video that he will be back. So we know that, and this was obviously before everything happened. We know how it is, how important it is for a lot of players to be that one team player or the one team athlete. But in the Maxx Crosby thing, I just feel like you have to make up your mind. And this is something that I talk about with Steph. This is something that I talk about with Giannis. You have to make up your mind. You can't say that you want to be a one team athlete and on this in the same breath complain and talk about wanting to win when your team is not in the position of winning. The Raiders have not been in a position to win for a minute now. Now, yes, the fortune of the Raiders are changing drastically now, but they haven't been in the position to win. That's why Maxx Crosby, as great as he is, a lot of people don't really know much about him because the Raiders haven't been uh, in the good. They haven't won much of anything for a good minute. Maxx Crosby has been terrorizing teams for the longest, but that don't matter because you're not winning. So I do understand the want to when we talk about wanting to be a one team athlete, and that's what Maxx Crosby wanted to do. And when he got traded, I think he understood, and we understood. Okay, well, yes, he didn't want to be traded. He is getting traded to the Baltimore Ravens, which is a team and organization that people feel is a top notch organization. And you have someone like Lamar Jackson, a team that, even though they did make the playoffs last year, this is a win now team. And Maxx Crosby just puts them over the top because you're on a defense now that has Kyle Hamilton and Malik Starks and or Malachi Starks, I'm sorry, and Nate Wiggins and Roquan Smith and Kyle Van. Like it's this was going to be the perfect situation. But now with everything blown up, I don't know what's going to happen with all the free agents that the Raiders agreed to. But what I will say is this: as frustrating as it can be, and it's a he say she say at this point because you're hearing the Ravens side saying, he failed the physical and the Raiders did not disclose how hurt Maxx Crosby was because I do want to preference. We all knew that Maxx Crosby. It was clear knowledge that Maxx Crosby had surgery to repair his meniscus. I think he had that 2 months ago, and I think from reports are saying he just got off crutches a week ago. You have to know that a player of that caliber, a player that just got off crutches, is not going to pass a physical. Now, we're all learning that he probably would have failed a physical for 32 teams. But I don't know. You knew he wasn't going to pass, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more on the Ravens side. Um, but he had a meniscus. Like he's not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. That's just fact at this point. Um, but or it looks like he's not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. Just saying. But I will say this on the Raiders side, there's going to be a lot of decisions that now has to be made. Do you reroute or try to reroute Maxx Crosby somewhere else? Which I don't know. Or do you keep Maxx Crosby and now you still have someone if they're able to get the deals done? You still have someone like Nakobe Dean. You still have arguably the second best center in the league in Tyler Lindenbaum. You're about to get the number one overall pick, so you're about to get Fernando Mendoza. You still have Ashton Genty. You still have Brock Bowers. This team can be really good. This team can is really setting up perfectly for the future. And now you have one of the best offensive linemen and now one of the best defensive players. And again, I understand that the relationship, because mentally, I can understand how tough that is. You're already preparing mentally. Okay, I've been traded. I'm about to be a Baltimore Raven. I'm about to uproot my life from Vegas to Baltimore. Like that, I understand that, and I can understand how tough it is to now be like, never mind. Like Maxx Crosby was in Baltimore when all this news hit, so I get it. I completely get how tough this can be. Um, but now, if you're just looking on paper and assuming that the Raiders figure everything out, you have one of the best defensive players and one of the best offensive linemen. You have young talent. This could turn out to be a blessing in disguise for the Raiders. This can turn out to be the Raiders now looking, because if they keep Maxx Crosby, which there's a good chance that they will, the Raiders can come out with one of the best rosters in football. And that is something that we haven't talked about for years now, which is incredible to think. Now, let my conspiracy theories fly a little bit. And we're just speaking on the Raiders right now. I believe, you know how they say not everyone's your friend? Not everyone you work with, not everyone that you come in contact with, not everyone that is close to you is essentially your friend, or not everyone that's close to you essentially wants the best for you. What we have to remember, and what is clear as day, is not only is the NFL a business, each team is their own business, and each team is going to do what's best for them. Each team understands we need, like they of course the betterment and the what's best for the NFL is is first, but teams are going to do what's best for them. And I believe that yes, the Raiders, in all intents and purposes, wanted Maxx Crosby gone. I believe, I mean, they traded him away, so that's obvious. But I believe that Maxx Crosby, I'm sorry, I'm reading. Okay. I believe that they wanted Maxx Crosby off the bed because I just feel like the things that Maxx Crosby was talking about on social media, and it was just a back and forth between him and his camp and then the Raiders. It just didn't look good. The ending to the season, the end, the beginning of the off season, it just did not look good. And you can tell both sides just needed a break. When they were talking about Maxx Crosby and how injured he was compared to how he was, it was a lot. And this is where I'm going to put my conspiracy theory on. I believe the Raiders knew, because these are billion-dollar companies. Essentially, these teams are billion-dollar companies. I believe the Raiders knew how injured Maxx Crosby was, and I do believe that they withheld information to get Maxx Crosby because, in all intents and purposes, if Maxx Crosby was healthy, completely healthy, I believe that he is worth two first round picks, especially when you talk about a team like for a team like Baltimore that needs his services more than most. I believe if perfectly healthy, he is worth two first round picks. And for people that don't understand, or for people that sort of have the vision that I do, and when we talk about football, or when it's hard to compare football and basketball, because two first round picks is steep in basketball, but it's much more steep in football, because in football most of these players are more ready to play. um Perfectly healthy Maxx Crosby is one of the best players in football. But I do think that the Raiders withheld just how much or how injured he really was, because injured, I don't think Maxx Crosby is worth 2 first round picks. Now, I may have speculated on social media that this could have been the Raiders' ploy all along. You could have traded him to the Ravens, understanding that there's a possibility that he can be so hurt once they do his physical. You know, let me put a pin on that for a second, actually, and let me address this. Yes, he probably would have failed every physical that he had, or there, like I said, there are 32 teams, and I'm sure what one team will accept, another team won't. What one team will deem as acceptable, another team might not. For the Baltimore Ravens, Maxx Crosby not passing his physical and whatever they saw, because obviously we don't have, the only thing that we know is that he failed his physical. We don't know exactly what it looked like. They could have deemed, all right, the timetable for his return, and when he returns, he may not be the same type of player that is not worth 2 first round picks. We're just gonna pass. And they did. But for another team, like I'll talk about my Washington team. For Washington, they can be like, you know, yeah, he's not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. However, he's Maxx Crosby, and when he's back, he's going to change the fortune of our team. So we're going to pass him. You know what I'm saying? Like that's usually what happens. Maybe the Raiders thought that the Ravens were on that type of time. Like, it is what it is. We know he's not going to be. We all know he had a meniscus repair surgery just 2 months ago. We're good. I mean, we understand we're going to take him anyways. Nah. But what I will say, and and it's crazy how much ripple effects, because what I just read was the Raiders are planning to honor all the free agency contracts. They signed a lot of people. I think they signed like the most money up to this point in free agency. They went crazy. And they had some really good free agency signings. But that was under the impression that a max contract player was getting off their books. And with that alert, I don't know if they'll be able. Well, they might, because I think that there's a good chance that he's still going to get traded, but their trade is probably going to happen maybe closer to the draft now. I don't know. But this this is crazy. Let's talk about the Ravens side of it, because that is the more intriguing side, actually. And that is the side that actually gets more, or is getting most of the attention. Because I was very intentional in saying that this is not the first time that something like this has happened. This is, however, one of the first times where a player of this magnitude and a trade of this magnitude happens. But this is not the first time this has happened. And the reason why I made it a point to say that is because this happened multiple times. But with this organization, with the Baltimore Ravens, it's happened at least 3 times. Three. I think back in 1997, back in 2008, I believe, or 2012 or something like that. And then again in 2018. Again, I want to preference this, and I want to make it abundantly clear that we don't know what the medical results look like. We don't know what the Baltimore Ravens saw. We don't know what Maxx Crosby's knee looked like. And I think Adam Schefter report that multiple doctors looked at this before the Ravens made the decision, like, this ain't gonna be good. But I want to understand, and I want to express and show why the league, not just the Raiders, is so upset with the Ravens. One, because this is not the first time the Ravens have done this. And two, this changes the entire landscape of the league. Imagine this. Imagine you want to buy a car, and your dream car has all your specs, everything that you're looking for is right there. You go to the dealership and say, "Hey, that is my dream car. That is what I want." The dealership goes, "Ah, man, we just sold that dream car, fortunately. I mean, we just sold that car, unfortunately." You were like, "Damn." Okay. Well, let's pivot. Let's go find another car, and you get your second option or third option or something like that. It's not your dream car, but you're good with what you got. As soon as you make the decision, okay, this is the car that I'm getting, you sign it, you sign the paper saying that this is my car. They say, "Oh, actually, the car that's your dream car is available now. The person said they don't want it no more." This is after you didn't sign, you didn't done everything, and you just signed the paper, this, that, and the third. They say, "Hey, we don't. The your dream car is actually available. I know you just signed, and now the car is technically yours, but your dream car is available." Do you understand how frustrating that would be for somebody? And you're unable to go back, and do you understand how frustrating that would be? The Baltimore Ravens had Maxx Crosby. They agreed to a deal. Now, yes, I understand how important to know that, or how important it is to understand that these deals are not binding until 4 p.m. today, or until 4 p.m. March 11th. But they had Maxx Crosby. And then that means other teams like the Cowboys, like the Bears, like the Eagles, they can't now make an offer because and they have to pivot because like, damn, well, he's on the Ravens. They got the Ravens got him. So they start the money that they could have given or could have provided, or some of the trade packages that they could have sent, they don't do anymore because the Ravens have the player. So you see Rashard Gary going to the Cowboys. That money that probably was going to go to Maxx Crosby. Like you see a bunch of moves being made with the assumption that this one team has that guy. So and again, I understand that none of these deals are binding until 4 p.m. Now it's like, wait, well, hold up. What the fuck? Hold up. What? Now you're like, damn, man, because it puts you in a bind. And this is why a lot of people are also upset with the Ravens. It puts you in a bind because now it's like, what do you do? Now that you know, okay, shoot, I know that I agreed to all of this. I know that I agreed in principle to all these contracts, all these free agents. But that's Maxx Crosby right there. That's my dream car right there. Do I renege on the deal and say, "Hey, you got to understand, that's Maxx Crosby," because that makes your organization look terrible. I don't. The optics look horrible for the Ravens right now. We're gonna add on to that in a second, but the optics look horrible for the Ravens. Now, I do agree that this is a huge blow for the Ravens as well. Because when you see that they lost all these damn free agents, and again, even with me saying this, I don't know when this goes out. I know it's going to go out today, March 11th, but even with me saying this, none of this is binding until 4 p.m. I think Eastern Standard Time. But I think now it's like the Ravens turned into one of the biggest winners to one of the biggest losers in free agency because they were under the assumption that they had Maxx Crosby. And I believe now when you look, you don't have Maxx Crosby. I think they lost 9 free agents. So the hole is deeper than a damn crater. And you thought that, okay, well, at least you got Maxx Crosby. You don't got him anymore. You lose people like Isaiah Likely. You lose Tyler Lindenbaum. You lose Patrick Card. You lose a bunch of defensive players. Like the Ravens are bare right now. Even yeah. So I think that I mean obviously they made the deal. And I believe if they with you giving 2 first round picks, not only do you think that homie's going to be ready on your timeline, knowing he's not going to be essentially ready, but their medicals had to show something that I know it's hard and it sounds like I'm shooting the Ravens bail. I'm not, but you had to see something because again, to go from having Maxx Crosby to not having Maxx Crosby is huge. Now, putting on my conspiracy theory hat, Ravens could have had buyer's remorse. They could have had, or they could have say, well, we just gave 2 first round picks, something that the Ravens have never done, might I add, in their entire existence. Hmm. All right. Well, we like Maxx Crosby a lot, but we like those 1st round picks. And I don't know if you see in the corner over there, but there's a guy that is available named Trey Hendrickson. And while he would be a tad bit more, actually, he'd be a little bit cheaper, still productive because what, just 2 years ago, he led the league in sacks. And if we fail his physical, which then legally allows us to back out of the deal, we get our 2 first round picks back and we get our cap space back and we get to sign Trey Hendrickson. So now we have Trey Hendrickson, 2 first round picks, and we're good. Let's do it. That could be what happened. While yes, you want Maxx Crosby, I do think a little bit of buyer's remorse could have happened. Buyer's remorse doesn't necessarily mean that you don't like what you bought. It just means, damn, I may not have wanted to buy this, or we may have found this at a cheaper cost, or we may have found a better deal. You know what I'm saying? Which is, I mean, the Ravens are losing the optics game tremendously because you do this in the very next day. Like when you wake up in the morning, you see the ESPN Bleacher Report alert that they signed Trey Hendrickson to a 4-year deal. Which, if it's not, if you take the conspiracy theory hat off and it's like, damn, you have to pivot. This is a perfect way to pivot. You had the best available free agent when we talk about pass rushers, and you get to keep your 1st round picks. And if I mean, I know they don't do this, but why don't you package one of those 1st round picks? Maybe go get that wide receiver out in Philly. Just saying. But this is monumental because this is also going to have a lasting effect on the Ravens. There's a lot of teams, and you're even hearing it from reports. There's a lot of teams that are not going to do deals with the Ravens because they feel that they operate in bad faith. There's going to be agents that don't want to make deals with the Ravens because they feel that they operate in bad faith. Because I cannot specify enough that this is not the first time this has happened to this organization. When I, again, this is a whole new episode that I'm recording. I had to scrap because again, the episode that was supposed to come out was praising the Ravens and saying that this Maxx Crosby trade definitely propels them to championship status, and you know, talking about Lamar Jackson versus Dan Orlowski, and how this just changed. There was a lot of outdated information that was about to be talked about. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. I know it said that the Raiders plan to honor the contracts that they agreed to, which kind of signifies to me that they're still going to try to trade Maxx Crosby. But even in that, and this is another ripple effect of this whole decision. Maxx Crosby is not going to get the Raiders are not going to get two first round picks for Maxx Crosby. They might get one or something, but you're not going to get two first round picks for Maxx Crosby because now you're putting teams on alert. Like, hold up, how hurt is he? While teams are upset with the Ravens did help other teams try to build a package for Maxx Crosby because it's not going to be as grand as two first round picks. That's just not going to happen. That's done for. Um, yeah. Mm. And now for the Ravens, I think getting Trey Hendrickson is good. I don't know, which is also again they're losing the optics battle because Trey Henderson's coming off an injury as well. So I don't know if he's gonna. I'm almost sure he's gonna fail his physical, but that ain't gonna matter to the Ravens. Which is why that whole first round pick thing is. I think it's they got a little bit of buyer's remorse. They're just like, damn, you know. Mm. This is a crazy situation. This is a situation, like I said, I can't express how much because we're gonna obviously see, but this is gonna have huge ripple effects because now, well, yes, you have two first round picks or whatever. The Ravens still have a lot of holes. Again, well, yes, they were able to get someone like Trey Hendrickson, which again is not binding until 4 p.m. You still have seismic holes to fill. And Maxx Crosby, he's damn near a universe in of itself. That's how good he is. But Trey Hendrickson, it's a good pivot. But it's like Trey at this point of their careers. How old is Trey Hendrickson? I do want to see that Trey because I know 31. Yeah, a 31-year-old pass rusher that had an injury history compared to a 29-year-old pass rusher that had injury history. I guess we'll see. But this is just a tough situation for everyone involved, honestly. And again, this is not the first time this has happened. Go look it up. I think it happened in 1997 and it also happened in 2008, I believe. Um, but this is I don't know what happens to the Ravens or Raiders moving forward. Raiders have to figure out because again, it says that they're going to honor all the contracts. I don't know how they do that and expect to keep Maxx Crosby because they were dishing out money left and right. Um, and for the Ravens, they have a seems like a nothing's permanent, but they have a stain on their organization right now. Because on top of that, on top of the Max Crosby thing, they still haven't redid a deal, if I'm not mistaken, with Lamar Jackson, and they still have holes to fill. Now there are still some free agents out there, but all the top free agents are gone, and they lost like 9 players, which is crazy. And they're losing the optics game. Now I understand it doesn't matter when winning is involved, but you know this is a crazy situation, and a situation that isn't just going to be felt with two teams. The ripple effects is going to affect so many teams. Because what happens to the Cowboys? The Cowboys, who I think were second in the running to getting Maxx Crosby, do they re-engage? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's which it says that they're not, but because they pivoted and got Rashawn Gary. Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know. It's a crazy situation. This situation is so crazy. It make me have to cancel a whole episode that I recorded to record something else. That's how outdated that episode was that I just recorded yesterday. But we'll see. Hmm. Speaking of we'll see. Speaking of outdated, speaking of groundbreaking situations. I don't know if you guys can see this. For all my DSP listeners, I apologize. I have a Francis Tiafo um, bobblehead that I usually put on my desk or I usually have on my desk when I record these episodes. And I got this from a Wizards night, a Wizards game. Obviously, I'm from the Maryland, D.C. area, and Washington is my favorite team. Screw up. And one of the bobblehead nights, you got Francis Tiafo. And that is the only bobblehead that I have that is present almost every episode. I say all that to say that I am a Wizards fan. I have a Wizards tattoo on my leg. Um, I'm a Wizards fan, and I can't express to you how how much of a mistake I thought it was when I got an alert on my phone saying that Bam Adebayo had like 30 points in the first quarter. I said, Bam Adebayo? Now I was at work at the time, and the the blessing is there's TVs everywhere. And I say, yo, can we turn one of these TVs to the Wizards game? Now, obviously, I was the only one tuning in, but I'm like, yo, can we one of these things? So then they turn on the Wizards game, and I'm watching. And then at halftime, he has 46. I said, damn, Bam hooping. And then third quarter ends. Bam Adebayo is like 65, 61 points. I said, at this point, they're starting to become a crowd because we're witnessing something that like is this about to happen? Because you see this a lot. One of the clearest examples I can remember was Klay Thompson when he scored 61. He scored 61 in 3 quarters and didn't play the fourth. And a lot of people were upset with Steve Kerr. A lot of people were upset with the Golden State Warriors because it's like you had an opportunity. Klay had an opportunity. The way that he was playing that game, he had an opportunity to break Kobe's record, which is 81 points, which is the second most uh, points ever scored in a game, but they didn't allow that to happen. And we've seen it several times. Just the other night, Luca had like 40 something or 50 something going into the third quarter and didn't play, you know? So then I'm looking. Bam has 65. He has 68. He has 71. I said, damn, Bam Adebayo has a 70-point game. He has 74. He has 77. I said, there's no there's no way Bam Adebayo was about to break Kobe Bryant's record. He has 79. He has 81. Bam Adebayo finished the game scoring 83 points, breaking Kobe Bryant's record. Uh, and now becoming the second most, or scoring the second most points all time in an NBA game. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I do think it's crazy that we have all these videos of a bunch of people. We have videos on the moon, essentially. But we don't got no video of Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points. We got videos of Bill Russell playing, but we don't got no video of Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just think that is shocking. But Bam Adebayo scored 83 points on the Washington Wizards. Now, that, which is so insane, the whirlwind of news alerts that we got in the span of 3 hours. In a span of 3 hours, we learned that the Ravens backed out of Maxx Crosby. We learned why Maxx Crosby felt his physical. We learned that Bam Adebayo had 77 points going into the third quarter or going into the fourth quarter. And then we learned that Bam Adebayo breaks Kobe Bryant's record and scores 83. Now, no offense to Bam. Bam Bam is not one of them players that you would, if there was any player in the league, any player in the league that you would think could break Kobe Bryant's record, first player you think of probably is Luca or maybe Shea. Because Shea just had 35-point game with 0 turnovers and a game winner against the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. You'd think maybe it was Anthony Edwards. Maybe it was he just had a hot night. Maybe it was Steph Curry. Maybe it was Jason Tatum. There are so many people that I would if you just said blank scores 83 points against the Wizards, the first person I would think of is Luca. I'm like, God damn, Luca broke the record. But the fact that it was Bam Adebayo, a person that's not even an offensive savant, not even an offensively driven player, is insane. Now, I think a bigger talking point, not just the fact that he broke Kobe's 81, not just the fact that he is now the second highest scoring player of all time in a game. I'm not going to lie. That was one, that was outside of being a Wizards fan. That was one of the toughest 83 points to watch. Cause bro, he took 43, which is an all-time record. He took 43 free throws. I think it was like 36 for 43 from free throw line. Yo, they were just they got to a point in the fourth quarter where both teams were intentionally fouling. The Wizards were intentionally fouling other people so that Bam would not break the record, and the Heat were intentionally fouling the Wizards so they can prolong the game and allow Bam Adebayo to get the points. There was a point where they were triple teaming Bam Adebayo and the inbounds just so he doesn't score, and he was still scoring. I hear a lot of discord around this game, and a lot of people are saying that this is an unethical 83. Kobe would be ashamed. This is the most BS 83 points because he took 43 free throws. And I think he shot 43 times or 41. He shot 41 times. I think he was like 20. In fact, let's see. Let's look at this box score real quick. I think that would help a lot. Um Bam Adebayo was 20 for 43, 7 for 22 from 3, 36 for 43. So he took 43 field goals and took 43 field or free throws. The next highest scoring player came off the bench, Simone Fontecchio had 18. This man had 83 points. Now, again, a lot of people are saying that this is an unethical 83, and it was hard to watch, bro. It was hard to watch at the end because they just kept fouling him. Like the Wizards, Jesus Christ, it was so man, it was. It was so embarrassing. People were looking at me like, bro, ain't you a Wizards fan? Oh, Jesus. It was so embarrassing. But I think it's hilarious, bro. People are, no, this 83 don't count. And that was the worst 83 I've ever seen in my life. And this, that, and the third. I agree with what Giannis said. Bro, it don't matter how you get it. 83 is 83. We've never seen anything like this. Clearly. 80 now under people are like, no man, Kobe got it the tough way. Kobe got 81, and I get it. And it looked drastically different than this 83, but he didn't score 83. Again, these are the stamina that you're gonna need to have to put up 43 field goals and 43 free throws is tough. Mm, mm, mm. I know a lot of people are upset that he obviously broke Kobe's record for the second most, but congratulations to Bam Adebayo, man. Damn, 83 points. Just looking at that. That eh, I was watching it, and when the game was over and I got the alert saying that the Heat beat the Wizards 150 to 129, and then it said Bam Bada Bio 83. I just watched it and I'm like, yo, that gotta be a typo. Like this is crazy. Just looking at 83 points is insane. The Wizards should be ashamed of themselves, bro. That's probably one of the worst. This is that's probably one of the worst games in franchise history. I'm so serious. And this is a franchise that has lost heartbreakers in the playoffs. This is a franchise that's been blown out in the playoffs. This is a franchise that let Kelly Olynyk be a driving force in the playoffs against them. This is a franchise that let LeBron James tap Gilbert Arenas on the chest, be like, "Hey, you missed this. You lost, and guess what he did? Gilbert Arenas missed the free throw, and they lost the game. This is probably the worst game in Wizards history. You allowed Bam Adebayo to break Kobe Bryant's record. You allowed Bam Adebayo. You allowed an NBA grown man, an NBA player, to score 83 points. You know, I've been on record saying that I think that Kobe's 81 points was never going to be broken. Not because um, I don't think that there's players that are talented enough to score 81, but we've seen it so many times. A player there has to be so first of all, you have to have the hottest night of your life, obviously. I don't think Bam Adebayo in any level has taken 43 shots. But you have to have the hottest night of your life, and there has to be a lot of things that go your way in a sense of we've seen so many times that a player would be on the trajectory to get 81, and the coach, they don't play the fourth quarter. We just saw the other night, Luca had 46 at halftime and didn't play the second half pretty much. Uh we've That's why I just didn't think, I thought that those were one of those records that people just were gonna quote unquote respect and not let anyone do it, because I mean it's tough. But Eric Spoelstra was wanted this record, bro, and they got it. Um, Damn, Washington really gave up 81 points, bro. 83. I'm sorry, 83 points to Bam Adebayo. I love Alex Sarr, man, but golly, Alex Sarr got 95% of that 83. Jesus Christ. Oh boy. Um, that was tough. That was a tough watch. But congratulations. I'm not. I don't agree with it's. It was it was a nasty way of getting it. I think shooting 43 free throws is insane, but 83 is 83. Like Giannis said, it don't matter how you got it, you got it. It don't matter how you get it, you got it. So, congratulations to Bam Adebayo for scoring the second most points in NBA history with 83 points. It's just unfortunate that he did it against my team in the Washington Wizards. Speaking of Washington, let's talk about expectation versus reality. Now, I may have my feelings toward the whole White House UFC card. With everything that's going on in the world right now, I think the last thing that we should be thinking about is a UFC fight at the White House. Even even if there's even if the world isn't crazy right now, I think there should not be a UFC fight at the White House. That's just me. Um, but we knew that there was a UFC. There's going to be a UFC fight at the White House. UFC was going to host their prime or pay per view at the White House, and with this being the first time essentially ever that there was something of this magnitude, you're hearing a bunch of you were hearing a bunch of potential fights that could happen. There's a lot of stars, and this with this being a showcase of the UFC, with this being the first time ever that something like this have happened, you were hearing big names. You were hearing John Bones Jones. You were hearing Conor McGregor coming back. Um, Ronda Rousey was in the news. You're hearing her come back. Like they're big names that are huge draws. Was arguably going to be on this card, and Then the card was announced, and you see who's fighting. You see Ilya Tapora going up against Justin Gaethje. You see Alex Pereira going against Cyril Gain. Um, Sean O'Malley, Amen Zabai, Zabi, and you're hearing a lot of controversy around this because you're seeing one side said, "Oh, there was a fight that dropped out at the last minute," and you're hearing that, or we were hearing that it was supposed to be Islam versus Ilya Tapor, which would be, I mean, both of them don't like each other. They've been both trying to fight each other. They're both title holders. We thought that would probably be one of the mega fights. We also thought it was gonna be John Bones Jones against what's homie, bro? Aspinall. And that clearly didn't happen. So now, even though they weren't promised anything, now fans are feeling essentially cheated. You also thought we were going to see the return of Conor McGregor, and you're hearing Dana White say, "Oh no, it wasn't. It was never going to be John Bones Jones was never going to be on this card," which is we know that's a damn lie because John Bones Jones came out of retirement essentially to be on this card, and he is one of, even though he's older, he's one of the draws of UFC. You're hearing Conor McGregor. He said Conor McGregor wasn't going to be on the card, even though Conor McGregor was like, "No, you're negotiating with me." They were negotiating with my team to be on this card. And then you heard, the fight that fell through wasn't Islam and Ilya Tapora, um, which is clearly not the case because Ilya then comes out saying this is yet another time when Islam ran and had an excuse. He said it was an injury, and then Islam was like, "Nah, bro, we know it ain't no injury, ain't nothing sweet here. I'll fight you for free." There's a lot that is going on right now, and don't get me wrong. Shout out to even Justin Gates. Gaethje was like, "Yo, on Thursday they told me that there's no way I'm going to be on this card. On Saturday morning, they told me I'm going to be on this card. Like, there's the people that's on this card." Sean O'Malley was like, "There's a chance," but at the final moment, they called and was like, "Yo, you're going to be on it." No offense to this card. No offense to anybody. This isn't a prime time card at all. I know Justin Gaethje just won the BMF or has the BMF, I think. But no, that's not him. But this is it's not a prime time card, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what's going on with why fans are so upset with Dana White. They were talking about his booking strategy. Conor McGregor was talking about it and how he says they treat the fighters like cattle essentially. And he said he understands why you wouldn't Conor they used to do this with Conor McGregor all the time. They'll have a pay-per-view fight that they know they'll be able to sell. Like you're going to be able to sell a hundredth digit pay-per-view. You're going to be able to sell UFC 100, 200, 300 because that is, I went to UFC 300. I went to UFC 400, you're going to be able to sell that. But what they would do is they would withhold the big fights until 201 because 201 is harder to sell than 200. 301 is harder to sell than 300. So you're going to be like, "You know what? We're not going to put Conor McGregor on 300. We're going to put him on 301 so that he's going to be able, that we're going to be able to sell tickets," which means, and because 301 is not a quote unquote prime time fight, or it's not as prime as 300 or 400 or 500, you can pay these fighters less. This is not a I may disagree with if the fight should or should not be at the White House. What I do agree with is this is not a prime. This is not a White House card. No offense to all these people. Alex Pereira, I think he was supposed to fight John Bones Jones. It was either supposed to be John Bones Jones and Aspinall or Alex Pereira and John Bones Jones. No offense to Cyril Game, but that's not the reward that people were was expecting. No offense to Justin Gaethje, but Ilya Tempora was supposed to, or Tapora was supposed to fight Islam. He was supposed to fight somebody else. What if it was Ilya and Conor McGregor? Like that would be a draw. On top of the fact that you're seeing yet again people complain about contracts. The UFC just got like a $7.7 billion contract, and fighters are still arguing for better pay. It's insane, man. The U Obviously UFC is gonna do its thing, but it's like this. I don't. There's so many avenues. I guess I understand if Islam had an injury, I get it, but there are so many opportunities to win in this situation, and it feels like the UFC lost every single one of them. This is not a good card, especially not from the White House. Yeah, you have Alex Pereira as the big name, Ilya Tapora is the big name, Sean O'Malley, even though he's lost the last few, is a big name. Michael Chandler, sort of, but it's like it leaves fans saying this is it. Now, again, I understand, but when then you go at John Bones Jones saying, he was never going to be on the card and we don't need him, but then yet you were negotiating from what he says, you were negotiating with him up to the final hour, and you're saying that you don't need John Jones. Like, okay, you say he's done. He has arthritis or something in his hip. Okay, cool. Does that mean he can't fight? Why are you, like he said, why are you negotiating with me? But then you're telling me I'm done. You're telling me I can't do this anymore. What are you negotiating with me for? If that's how you feel about me, and you see a bunch of people come out, hell, Daniel Cormier, someone that is religiously opposed and the sworn enemy to John Bones Jones, even said, yo, why is the UFC treating John Bones Jones, who is undoubtedly their greatest fighter of all time? Why are they treating him like this? Aspinall, somebody that was supposed to fight John Bones Jones and things fell up, is saying, yo, if there's one person that shouldn't have to ask for shouldn't have to ask for money, shouldn't have to negotiate or negotiate stall due to money, is John Bones Jones. UFC is not treating their fighters right. And I'm sure they did not expect all this publicity. Well, they expected a lot of publicity once they announced this card. I don't think this is the publicity they thought they would get, because this is not a good card, not for no White House. Just saying. Um, Team USA lost to Italy in baseball. A team that has Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, Goldschmidt, Bryce Harper lost to Italy. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, shout out to Italy, but whoa, shout out to Italy, but nah, bro. Yeah, nah. So now, in the baseball world or World Baseball Classic, Team USA might not get out of Group B. Sucks. But there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, a link in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. So tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. I appreciate all you guys and thank you. For my DSPs, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, please subscribe, rate, share, comment. I'm trying to grow the podcast unilaterally, and I cannot do without you guys' help. Um, please follow the DSPs. It definitely means a lot. Also, for my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I post pretty much daily there. Please follow. I don't mind going back and forth. I don't mind debating in the comments. But if you are gonna leave a comment, please follow. Like, what are you leaving a comment? Why are we going back and forth? You're not even following me. You know what I mean? Please keep it respectful. And I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that you're listening to me and you have an opinion, both of which I appreciate. So all my DSPs or all my socials, please follow. Until next time, much love.